Welcome to my channel, Simply Speak English. If you like this story, then subscribe my channel for more interesting story. Nancy is my best friend. Nancy and I joined the same English class about a year ago. On the very first day, I noticed her energy. She walked in with a bright smile, a notebook ready to be filled, and an excitement that was contagious. She told the teacher and the whole class that she wanted to become fluent so she could travel, watch movies without subtitles, and make friends from all over the world. I remember thinking, wow, this girl has so much determination. She's going to be great at this. And at first, she was. Nancy worked so hard. She stayed after class to ask questions, filled her notebook with lists of words and grammar rules, and even practiced speaking English to herself in the mirror. She once told me, "I don't care how silly I look. I want to be confident when I speak." But after a few weeks, I noticed Nancy wasn't as enthusiastic anymore. She wasn't volunteering answers in class, and she seemed quieter than usual. I could tell something was wrong. One day after class, I waited for her outside and asked, "Nancy, are you okay? You don't seem like yourself lately." She sighed and said, "I don't know what's wrong with me. I study so much, but when I try to speak, I forget everything. It's like my brain just stops working. I feel like I'll never get better." I felt so bad for her. I told her, "Nancy, you're not alone. This happens to everyone who's learning a new language. Let's talk to the teacher. Maybe she can help." Nancy agreed, and after the next class, we stayed behind to talk to our teacher. The teacher listened patiently, and then said something that really stuck with me. "Nancy, forgetting words doesn't mean you're failing. It means your brain is still processing what you're learning. Let's try a new approach together." The teacher looked at Nancy and asked, "What do you like to talk about? What do you enjoy doing?" Nancy thought for a moment and answered, "I like cooking. It's what I do when I'm at home. I also like watching romantic comedies. They make me happy." The teacher smiled. "That's great. Learning English should be fun and about the things you love. Let's start with cooking and movies. It will make learning easier and more interesting." Nancy's first task was simple. The teacher said, "Write down all the words you know in English about cooking and romantic comedies." That evening, Nancy sat at her table. She looked around her kitchen and thought about the tools and ingredients she used. She also remembered the movies she liked to watch. Slowly, she made a list. Recipe, oven, pasta, vegetables, chef, subtitles, funny, love, and more. When she showed her list to the teacher the next day, the teacher was happy. "This is a great start, Nancy. Now we will make sentences with these words. For example, instead of just writing oven, you can write, 'I bake bread in the oven.' This will help you practice how to use the words." Nancy liked the idea. That evening, she took her list and wrote sentences for each word. I cook pasta with cheese, she wrote. I like movies with subtitles. Each sentence made her feel more confident. As she practiced, Nancy realized that studying didn't feel hard. She was learning English by talking about things she loved. Cooking and movies made her happy, and now they were helping her learn. Nancy and I learned a new way to practice English from our teacher. The teacher said, think about the conversations you might have about cooking or movies. Write those conversations and then say them out loud. Nancy sat down and started writing simple dialogues. She wrote things like, "What's your favorite dish? I love making pasta. What ingredients do you need? I need tomatoes, garlic, and olive oil." At first, Nancy felt shy about saying these sentences. She said, "It feels strange to talk to myself." I smiled and said, "Pretend you're talking to me. We can practice together." After class, we practiced these dialogues. I asked Nancy the questions, and she answered with a smile. The more we practiced, the more confident Nancy became. One day, she told me, when I'm cooking at home, I imagine someone asking me questions in English. I practice answering them while I cook. It feels like a real conversation. This idea made learning more fun for Nancy. She didn't need to wait for class. She could practice any time. Whether she was in the kitchen or watching a movie, she imagined people asking her questions in English and found herself answering them confidently. Slowly, speaking in English felt more natural to her, and she began to enjoy the process. At first, Nancy thought she needed to learn as many new words as possible every day. She told me, "I'm going to memorize 50 new words every day. The more words I know, the faster I'll be fluent." I looked at her, surprised. "Nancy, that's a lot. Are you sure it won't be too much?" I asked. She laughed and said, "I have to try. I want to learn quickly." But after a week, Nancy looked tired and frustrated. She told me, "I can't remember most of the words I've been trying to learn. I feel like I'm not good at this." I shared her worries with our teacher. The teacher listened and then gave Nancy some helpful advice. Fluency isn't about learning as many words as you can. It's about using the words you know. Start with 5 new words a day. Use them in sentences. Say them out loud and review them often. That will help you remember them. Nancy decided to follow this advice. She chose 5 words each day and made simple sentences with them. For example, if she learned the word knife, she would say, "I cut vegetables with a knife." If she learned the word funny, she'd say, "This movie is funny." She repeated the sentences several times and practiced them throughout the day. This new method worked. Nancy found that focusing on fewer words helped her remember them better. She felt more confident using the words in conversations, and studying felt less stressful. Little by little, Nancy's vocabulary grew and she became more comfortable speaking English. She realized that learning step by step was the key to her success. One day in class, Nancy was trying to speak, but she forgot the word apple. She looked upset and frustrated. The teacher noticed and said, "Nancy, let's make this fun. Draw a picture of an apple in your notebook. Write the word next to it and then make a sentence. I eat an apple every day." Nancy raised her eyebrows and laughed. "Really? Draw pictures?" she asked, surprised. The teacher nodded. "Yes, give it a try. It might help you remember." Nancy decided to try it. She drew a simple picture of an apple, wrote the word apple beside it, and then wrote the sentence. Later she told me, "This is actually helping. When I think of a word, I see the picture in my head. It's easier to remember now." From that day on, Nancy used this technique for all the new words she learned. If she learned the word carrot, she drew a small carrot, wrote the word next to it, and added a sentence like, "I eat carrots with my lunch." If she learned movie, she drew a tiny TV screen and wrote, "I watch movies on weekends." Her notebook quickly filled with little doodles and sentences. She enjoyed studying this way because it felt creative and fun. It became her favorite tool for learning English. The pictures and sentences helped her remember words more easily, and studying didn't feel like work anymore. Nancy realized that making learning visual made a big difference. Every time she opened her notebook, she smiled at the colorful drawings and felt proud of her progress. Step by step, her English was improving, and she was having fun along the way. Nancy made a promise to herself. She would practice speaking English every day. She told me, "I talk to myself in English when I'm cooking, cleaning, or even walking to the store. It feels silly sometimes, but it works." This daily practice helped Nancy become more comfortable with speaking. She didn't wait for someone to talk to her. She created her own opportunities to use the language. Nancy also started watching English movies and TV shows. At first, she used subtitles to understand the dialogue. But after a few weeks, she challenged herself by turning off the subtitles. She focused on listening carefully and picking up words and phrases. She took her practice even further by recording herself speaking. She would describe her day, talk about her favorite foods, or explain the plot of a movie. Then she listened to the recordings to hear how she sounded. This helped her notice the areas where she needed to improve, like pronunciation or sentence structure. One day, Nancy shared a recording with me. In it, she described her favorite movie in English. I listened carefully and was amazed. "Nancy, you sound so confident now," I said, truly impressed. Nancy smiled. "I still make mistakes, but I feel better when I hear how much I've improved," she said. Her daily speaking practice, combined with watching movies and recording herself, was making a big difference. Nancy's promise to practice every day had become a habit. Little by little, she felt more natural and confident speaking English. It wasn't always easy, but her hard work was paying off, and she was proud of how far she had come. One of the most important things Nancy learned was to celebrate her progress, no matter how small. I remember one day in class when she used the word ingredients correctly in a sentence. The teacher clapped and said, "Nancy, that was perfect." Nancy laughed and said, "It's just one word." The teacher replied, "Every word you learn is a step closer to fluency. Be proud of yourself." From that day on, Nancy started celebrating every small victory. She realized that progress isn't always big and obvious. It's the little steps that add up. After months of hard work, Nancy finally had her first real conversation in English. She went to a party where people were speaking English, and when someone asked her, "What's your favorite dish?" she took a deep breath and answered, "I love making pasta. I use tomatoes, garlic, and olive oil." When she told me about it later, her face lit up with pride. They understood me. I forgot a few words, but I didn't stop. I just kept talking. I hugged her and said, "Nancy, you did it. This is what fluency is all about. Not being perfect, but being confident." Nancy's journey taught me so much about patience, persistence, and the power of small steps. If you're learning a language, remember that it's okay to forget words and make mistakes. Just like Nancy, you can overcome these challenges with practice and determination. So, what about you? Have you ever felt like Nancy? Share your story in the comments below. And if you found this story inspiring, don't forget to like and subscribe.